You're listening to WOSD. I'm your host, Layla Palmer, from the OSD Marketing, Engagement, and Training team, and we are excited to have you join us for another installment of WOSD News. In this episode, we will recognize women in procurement to celebrate Women's History Month and Public Procurement Month. In the United States, Women's History Month and National Procurement Month are observed each year during the month of March. Since 1995, Women's History Month has been celebrated to recognize the contributions and achievements of women throughout U.S. history. Women have played a vital role in American history and are trailblazers for success and innovation. Public Procurement Month, which was proclaimed in 2012 by the Institute of Public Procurement, is a time to celebrate public procurement and to acknowledge the impact procurement professionals have on the success of businesses across the country. To recognize the success of women in procurement here at OSD, I recently met with a few staff members to learn more about their achievements and success stories as women in procurement. First, we'll hear from OSD's Director of Environmental Purchasing, Julia Wolfe. You may recall Julia from a past WOSD News episode on the Environmentally Preferable Products, or EPP, program. Let's learn how that initiative connects to procurement and why Julia is so dedicated to making an impact through sustainable purchasing practices.
Hello, everybody. This is Julia Wolfe, and I have been with OSD for about 13 years, and I am the Director of Environmental Purchasing, and my job is basically, in a nutshell, to help integrate environmental specifications into our bids and try to get as many climate and environmentally preferable products and services into our contracts as possible. There's been a real major shift in procurement over the last 20 years to focus on best value. And Massachusetts was actually one of the first states to implement best value procurement practices. So that was really super. And we consider part of best value those products and services that have a reduced impact on health and the environment. Way back when, it was started with, grants from the federal government and Mass DEP, and they wanted us to focus on recycled content. Like, how do we use our purchasing power to ask for more recycled content in products, right? And one example that we did is we required 30% post-consumer recycled content fiber in our copy papers. So that's just like one example out of a lot. But the focus was really on recycled content. And if you fast forward to 2009, when we signed Executive Order 515, we were still interested in a lot of the recycled content, but the focus became more on toxics, how to find alternatives to toxic products. And then fast forward to about 2017, we started really thinking about decarbonization and climate change. And how do we reduce any type of fossil fuels in our contract? And so we're seeing all over the world, there's really a push to measure emissions and a push to set climate-based targets on reducing those emissions. For many years, it was just me, and I worked part-time, just me. And now we have soon to be 5 people. We actually have an intern working with us right now too. So I think just showing that progression from sort of recycled content to toxics to sort of climate focus, that's what we've really seen change in this industry. There are a lot of women in this industry that I think are making a huge difference. So it's really working with a lot of wonderful, talented, smart women.
Next, let's hear from Category Manager Kelly Thompson Clark, who will discuss her experiences in the world of procurement and share insights about the procurement process.
Kelly Thompson Clark. I am a category manager for OSD, and I have been with the Operational Services Division for 5.5 years. Prior to coming to OSD and prior to working for the state, actually, I worked in the Chamber of Commerce industry. Over my 20 plus years in that industry, I was always involved or engaged in the procurement process within the Chamber of Commerce that I was working for at the time, whether we were procuring products, services, equipment, anything like that. And so when I made the decision to leave that industry and started looking at opportunities within the Commonwealth, it's kind of funny. I actually interviewed for a different position at OSD. And through the interview, the individuals that interviewed me asked me if I would be interested in working in the sourcing area. And so they actually introduced me to leadership at sourcing. And I ended up interviewing there, and that's led me to today. That's why I am with sourcing and not another department at OSD. So it was, I was in the right place at the right time. I feel very fortunate and, very honored that they thought enough of me to suggest me to the sourcing department, because that kind of thing doesn't happen all the time. Oftentimes out in quote unquote, the real world, procurement process might be handled somewhat differently or not have as many regulations and so on around it, depending on the organization that's procuring. But I would have to say that the process takes a lot longer than I think people realize. From start to finish, it's many months in play. And it's not a matter of somebody calls you on a Wednesday and wants to set up a contract on a Friday. That's not how it works. I don't look at it as based on my gender or orientation. I think being in procurement, I have a lot of opportunities to be involved in a lot of different types of contracts. We have a lot of different experiences in sourcing. And I think that depending on the area or the categories that you serve, you have a really interesting opportunity to be engaged with incredibly dynamic people from across the Commonwealth in general, and work with really hardworking, interested, and engaged vendors or service providers. I think that that's probably some of the most rewarding parts of the job.
Finally, Interim Assistant Secretary Anna Shpigel will walk us through a day in her job and share how procurement plays a vital role in that. Then, she shares some inspiration for other women in procurement and those interested in joining the field.
I'm Anna Shpigel. I'm the Interim Assistant Secretary here at the Operational Services Division. I have been with WOSD for about 8 years this October. Well, being the agency head, certainly my day varies depending on particular needs, either within the agency or on the secretariat level. A lot of my day is certainly spent on strategic work, but also on tactical work, meeting with WOSD directors, but also sort of figuring out our long-term strategy and various analysis of what's going on in the world. Our agency is very dependent on what's going on in the market and around us, because that's how we build our contract strategy, and we need to be reacting in real time to issues that come up. I would say be very curious about the world around us. Procurement is a really interesting area, especially if you're talking about government procurement. Procurement maybe sounds like a very narrow area, but it really encompasses a lot of disciplines and a lot of skills: business, legal, predictive analytics, and managing teams, and really making them work together as a well-connected puzzle. So it's a really exciting area, and I encourage young women to really take a good look at that sector.
The Operational Services Division invites you to celebrate and reflect on the achievement of women and women in procurement throughout the month of March. Thank you to Julia Wolfe, Kelly Thompson Clark, and Anna Shpigel for sharing such valuable insights and contributing to OSD's success in your role as procurement professionals. This concludes today's episode celebrating women in procurement. OSD looks forward to engaging with you on our social media and YouTube channels. Links to those are in the description box. To suggest ideas for future podcasts, email the OSD team at osdoutreach@mass.gov. Thanks again to Julia Wolfe, Kelly Thompson Clark, and Anna Shpigel for sharing their insights on being women in procurement. This podcast was produced, audio engineered, and edited by me, Layla Palmer. Thank you for joining us.